Hey y'all, how's everybody feeling? It's Mai here again, back with the second book in our book series for the fall. This book is by renowned author Richard Wright. Some of you all may have read Black Boy or Native Son. Those are two of his most famous works. And this actually was pulled from his archives. So I don't believe this book has been published in mass production, but Barnes and Nobles was doing something where I guess they were showcasing some untold stories. And this being one of them, The Man Who Lived Underground by Richard Wright. So I just finished reading it today. I want to look inside. This one wasn't annotated much because it was actually just an engrossing read. But just to show you all the text, I should flip it this way. So you can see the text is not too small. And I always do this just to display to you all how easy of a read or not challenging of a read this could be also. So it's a pretty decent read. Total runtime, again, probably no more than 2 hours. If you sit consistently and get through it, if you put it down and pick it up, you know, maybe every day for 30 minutes, you'll probably get through it in about 4 days, maybe no more than 5. Yeah, so it's a quick synopsis of this book. Or should I read to you all the synopsis that they give here and then go into what I got? So right on the inner flap, it reads, an incendiary novel about race and violence in America. Fred Daniels, a Black man, is picked up by the police after a brutal double murder and tortured until he confesses to a crime he did not commit. After signing a confession, he escapes from custody and flees into the city's sewer system. And the rest of it kind of goes into the author and his works. Highly recommended read. So as I just mentioned, the book, I mean, it starts off super climactic. Just what I read is how it starts off. So the main character, Fred Daniels, is leaving Mrs. Peabody's house or Miss Watson's house, someone's home who he, I guess, was doing some type of work for, but they were out of town. Haphazardly, the neighbors who live right directly across the street from Miss Watson or Miss Peabody, I can't remember which one he was cleaning, they were murdered. And when he exited the home, he was immediately approached by the police who were on that beat, on that area of the street or block, and accused of the crime. Rightfully so, he's denying. Please call my employer, please call the pastor. You know, I go to church, my wife is pregnant. Like, deny, please, I've had nothing to do with this. I promise I have nothing to do with this. And unfortunately, the police do not believe him and they arrest him and take him into custody. Again, super climactic from the first 5 pages. While in custody, they begin to torture him and beat him brutally. The author does such a fabulous job at really describing vivid imagery that you can paint in your head. That's one thing I really love about books. When you really get into the book, it's like watching a movie in your head. And it's awesome, right? You pick it up and put it down whenever you want to, but it's definitely a movie playing in your head. You're seeing all of the imagery, all of the descriptive adjectives that they're using for the different colors in the room, the sounds that are being made. It just all became really real. So I guess I should also give you all a bit of a caveat. This read, I don't want to say that it can be traumatizing, it just can be anxiety triggering because, again, it's I haven't gotten to the back of the book where it also has the author's untold stories of his grandmother. I just finished the main part of the book today and wanted to make sure I recorded it while it was still fresh in my head. But I don't believe this was a true story. I believe it was based on stories his grandmother told him, which means it probably could have been based on a true story. Just want to give you all the caveat, a little trigger warning. Pace yourself as you read it. Be prepared for what you're reading if you do decide to pick this book up and read it with me. So continuing on, he is interrogated, beaten brutally, tortured, I mean, just for a confession to a crime that he did not commit. Keep in mind, he just left work. He's excited about his child, his unborn child, who is expected to come any day now. His wife was at home on bed rest with a cousin there waiting for him to return from work. So just imagine all the things that's going on in his head while, again, he's just denying, but also pleading with the officers, please call my employer. They will vouch for me. Please call my reverend. He will vouch for me. Like, they did none of that. In the midst of them beating and torturing Fred Daniels, they got him to sign a confession. Obviously, just out of mind. I mean, I can't remember exactly how long they were beating and torturing him for, but it went on for a significant amount of time, to the point where he just became so dreary and weary and not optimistic for the future. He was coerced into signing a confession. So he signs the confession, and then I believe they decided to take him to see his wife. Who, when he went home, when he went home to see his wife, and his wife's like, what's going on? What happened to your face? Who is this man? Meaning one of the police officers. There was 3 police officers, Murphy, Lawson, and I forget the last one, maybe Johnson or something like that. One of them was standing in the doorway, obviously, because they were escorting him, you know, inside to make sure, I guess, they have that control over him. So the wife, the pregnant, I mean, heavily pregnant wife, it's like, oh my God, tell me what's happening. And, you know, he is refusing to admit any wrongdoing, obviously, because he did nothing wrong, but also just so confused as to how to get himself out of the situation when all of this has transpired, and he signed a confession ultimately. Her water breaks, and they're like, okay, you have to drive her to the hospital, meaning the police need to drive her to the hospital, which I guess was the one decent thing that they did. So Fred Daniels attempts, mind you, he's been beaten, eyes shut, wobbly, off balance. He picks his 9-10-month pregnant wife up and begins to carry her out to the car, stumbling this, that, and the other. So the policeman has to help. And obviously he's like, you know, I'm a man, like, you guys have already violated me so much. No, I can do this much. So he attempts to persevere. Fast forward, they get to the hospital. I think put her in a bed, and they're talking about his charges, you know, the double murder, double homicide that he did not commit. And in that moment, he realized there was nothing else that he could do to prove his innocence, and decided he had to flee. So he flees the hospital while his wife is giving birth to his child, and he flees to the sewer. It was raining. Once he gets out the hospital, I guess one of the manholes were halfway uncovered, and that was where he found his opportunity to hide. And once down in the sewer, again, the author just does such an amazing job of vividly describing the smells, the scents, the way the water flows and makes your body sway in the sewer, the rushing of the water, hearing the pipes, the rustiness, the just everything. Just such a great job at describing it. I actually, when reading, felt like, oh my God, I'm hiding in the sewer with him, like, whew. And then the bulk of the story takes you through his time living underground. Again, the first like 10 pages are just super climactic, and then it gets into how he manages underground. So he's underground, of course, and this also made me think, like, going to, what was that most recent movie that Jordan Peele did? Us, and how it was like kind of talking about people who live underground and life underground and in sewers. It kind of made me start thinking about, like, wow, okay, well, just think about it. So he's underground, essentially, this sounds weird, but making a life for himself, making it to where he feels safe, making it to where he feels comfortable. Mind you, this is all underground in sewer pipes. So he's moving around. I think the first area of underground that he came to was this black church. So he hears the singing of the churchgoers, and he's like, ah, this is a church. And because this is still, you know, the first couple of instances of him having just fled from the police who brutally beat him and made him sign a confession to a double homicide that he did not commit when just coming home from work, trying to come home from work and get back to his pregnant wife. He was resentful to these Black people. Like, how are they in there singing these spirituals, singing these gospels of, oh, everything's gonna be all right, or Jesus gonna, like, he was like, no. So that was the first stop. I forget if he collected anything from there, but then he goes on, he finds, I believe it's like a jeweler shop, some other coal miner. It was a jewelry shop. It was a fruit shop, like a grocery type store. And there was some other place with a lot of money. But he's collecting all of these items, like radio, tool chest, just, you know, taking things as he's knocking down holes in the wall in the sewer from the items that he's found that he's filched or salvaged or whatever. And, you know, just he plastered the money on the wall of the sewer. He got some guns from somewhere. Synopsis of the story, guys, I'm not gonna get all the details for him. Like, he brought the guns from wherever. Again, he's salvaging these items. And from the jewelry store, he stole watches and diamonds. From somewhere else, he stole some cash out of a safe. Mind you, these are all opportunities he had via his vantage point underground, his vantage point in the sewer. You know, the sewers connect everything. So as he's moving about, he's entering these businesses and entering these places and so on and so forth. So he's stealing all these items or filching all these items, and the people who the items are being filched from, or those who are responsible for protecting the items, like a night watchman, the security guard, the coal miner, they're all now being accused, falsely of course, of these crimes that they did not commit. So he's down there in the sewer collecting all of these items that don't belong to him. However, he's collecting these items that don't belong to him with the intention of giving them back, with the intention of kind of showing like, hey, we're all guilty. We're all guilty of something. It was really interesting how the author was kind of threading that piece into this whole storyline. I was so traumatized by the beginning. It took me a minute to get into like, okay, what is he really doing with all these items? But it was definitely in the end just to showcase how freedom actually works or how it's perceived. Crazy. So days go by, he's doing all that. Fast forward toward the end of the novel. Fred Daniels, okay, when he went into the fruit store, he thought that he was the only one in the fruit store, obviously because it was closed. However, white customers were walking down the street like, hey, we want some grapes. Give us a bundle of grapes. So he served them the bundle of grapes. Was maybe work there. Like, what else was he gonna do? I can't remember if he just stayed out of the sewer or if he went back in the sewer and then came back out. But ultimately, this is the point that I want to make. For whatever reason, he decided to, well, I mean, he should have decided to come out of the sewer, right? But for whatever reason, he decided to come out of the sewer and return back to the police station to confront the three policemen, Lawson, Murphy, and we're going to call him Johnson, I think that was his name, who brutally beat him, tortured him, interrogated him hours on end, made him miss the birth of his child, falsely accused him, coerced him into signing a confession. He wanted to face these men to vindicate himself. You know, I did not do that crime. I was hiding from you all. I want to show you all where I was hiding, over here in the sewer. I saw you all beat the watchman who you thought took the money. I saw you all beat the guy, or someone committed suicide. Whoever was responsible for watching the jewelry or the diamonds or the large sum of money he took, someone ended up committing suicide. And again, from his vantage point in the sewer, he could see all this happening. So he first gets into the police station. And mind you, he's been in the sewer for a few days. He doesn't know how long he's been in the sewer at this time. Obviously, you know, there's no clock or anything down there, but he had been in the sewer for 3 days. So, he, you know, looks as if he just came out of a sewer. And he's talking all this talk that no one understands. So part of me had to put myself, obviously, back in this time frame. And I'm thinking, well, how hard could it have been for him to convey what it was that he wanted to convey? Understanding that it was illegal for us Black people to learn to read and to become literate. I'm thinking, okay, maybe he didn't have all the words. He knew what he wanted to say, but he just didn't have all the words. And that's ultimately what the author ends up explaining as the story continues. So he's in the police station talking to all these, random police officers like, hey, where are those police? You guys know who I'm talking about. Where are they? I need to talk to them. Police officers are like, what are you talking about? He ends up mentioning Miss Watson. I'm going to say Miss Watson is the one he works for. He ended up mentioning Miss Watson. And one of the police officers, he ended up mentioning Miss Watson in, I guess, the Peabody house or something like that. Mind you, they were directly next door to each other. So one of the police officers goes, oh, that's Lawson's beat. Let's take him up to Lawson. And I had to put the book down when I started getting to this part because I knew how it was going to end, unfortunately. But it was such a good read. So enthralling. So he makes it upstairs. He's escorted upstairs. Lawson and Murphy and Johnson are in Lawson's office, doing what cops do, smoking their cigs, playing cards, feet kicked up, relaxing, super, super shocked to see Fred Daniels. And they're asking him questions. Oh, first, this is what also took me aback. When the police officer escorted Fred Daniels up to Lawson, he goes, Lawson, there's someone here to see you, a boy. And it just, again, reminded me of how dehumanized Black people, Black men have been and are. How, back in the Constitution, we were 3/5 of a human being, not even a human being. And how the author, again, so gently, delicately, but accurately to the point depicts how we were perceived just, no more than 50 years ago. So, he says a boy, meaning this Black man, is here to see you. And, that code word means it's a Black man. So he's like, well, what's going on? Lawson recognizes who it is. And they're like, boy, where have you been? Boy, where have you been? Boy, where have you been? And again, Fred Daniels does his best to muster up the language to tell them, I've been underground. And he's saying, I've been underground. And they do not believe him. They're like, who's been hiding you? Have you seen your wife? Do you know you have a son? Didn't even know he had, his newborn son. He missed the birth of that, so on and so forth. So he just like trying to explain to them all the things that he's filched from being underground, the money, the jewelry, the watches, the radio, the guns, the tool belt with the tools that he's been using to hack around through the sewers. And he's trying to confess actual guilt to these crimes while clearing up the fact that he did not murder the Peabodys. Ironically, the person who did murder the Peabodys was found. So while Fred Daniels and the 3 officers are in Lawson's office, Lawson is suspecting Fred of trying to like set him up, like basically unveil the corruption of the police department. So Lawson then asks Murphy, hey, do you still have his confession? Murphy pulls it out of the back pocket. Lawson takes a match, burns it up. He shows it to Fred Daniels. He's like, boy, do you see this? Forget about this. It was all a bad dream. None of that happened. Oh, just despicable, right? Fred Daniels is adamant about showing them where he was, down in the sewer. So again, fast forward, it's the tail end of the book, and the police officers escort him out of the station. They're trying to keep it quiet so that the other officers don't know that he was falsely accused, beaten, and tortured, and then had to run away subsequently because of the false accusations underground. And that's why he's here to confess to the crimes underground. It's crazy. So they're trying to hide their wrongdoings. So they hide him, escort him out of the police station, and asking, have you seen your son? Obviously no. So they're just driving around. The officers are like, Lawson, what are you doing? They end up taking him to his apartment, slapping him up a bit up there too, because again, he's just trying to profess his innocence and actually clarify, hey, this is where I've been. I have proof. I want to show you all. These are the things that I have. Like, oh, just ridiculous. Finally, they believe him and they let him get out the car, take him to the manhole. He's pointing, that's the manhole that I was under, because they drive back to the hospital where he initially fled from to go back to that manhole to start the process. He struggles to open the manhole. Either Johnson or Murphy helped him with it. Lawson pulls his gun out. He's like, get down there, boy. It's raining. Again, all of the similar elements that were present when he fled the first time. So he's like, okay, I feel safe again. I feel comfortable again. This is like my element. He had grown solitude underground, alone by himself. So he's coming down the sewer, and you know, you have to step down the ladder. So he's using his hands getting down the ladder. He drops down to the bottom of the sewer, looks up. Come on, you know, what are you guys doing up there? And Lawson, who had his gun already out, points it at Fred Daniels and shoots him. Very climactic ending to an already climactic book. And again, the author's just vivid imagery of Fred being shot, being pushed further into the sewer, the water, the gushing, the winds, and just the release that his body feels thereafter. It was just so chilling, so beautiful. I really wanted to share this one with you all. So I will get back to reading Memories of My Grandmother and give you all a brief synopsis of that. It's probably about an additional 20 pages. Shouldn't be anything too hard, but definitely something that I'm interested in reading, and highly, highly recommend this to you all. Richard Wright, The Man Who Lived Underground. Enjoy.